All righty, Miss Dottie.
Okay.
And how is Cayenne?
She's really good. She's doing really well.
Oh, good. So what brings you to the lesson today? What's going on?
I feel like I'm stuck.
Okay.
I haven't ridden a whole lot this winter, so I may be a little bit premature with this, but I feel like I'm not. I don't think I feel like I'm stuck. So
And what do you
am-
mean by stuck? Where do you feel stuck?
So I've been riding completely not steering her at all. She gets to go wherever she wants to.
Okay.
And my main focus is to keep her neck straight and keep her head down, and so she gets stuck in this very small 15-meter circle, and it's almost impossible to get her out of it. So the only way for me to get her out of that circle is, and she does it both directions pretty much.
Mhm.
And so it's for me to start steering her with the reins. I can't do it with my seat. I can't do it with my legs. And then she gets all balled up. She starts tucking her chin and balling up in this little knot. And she really does not like a whole lot of contact on the bit. She gets agitated. So I try to, I hold her in that frame as much as I can to keep her straight, to keep her walking straight. And she fights with me. So when she gets straight, then I give her mouth back, and then she starts to, go back into this, moving into the circle. And so I've tried a little bit of seat bone, like I'm putting more pressure, putting more weight on the outside seat bone, whichever that one is. And she got kind of cranky. So I try to not put as much weight in my seat and put more weight on the outside leg and keep the seat bones out of the saddle. Like maybe that's too, the seat bone, pushing on the seat bone is having a reaction. I'm not positive about that. It was just the reaction. Her reaction was she relaxed a little bit and she stopped being so snarky. I don't know if that's the reason or something else changed in me. Maybe I relaxed a little bit. It's kind of hard to say, but we seem to be caught in this. If I don't hold the reins and insist that walk in a straight line, she doesn't. She's caught in this circle that I can't seem to get her out of.
And when she's stuck on the circle, what's the use of her head and neck? Where is it? Is her neck long? Is her head level or low? Is her head up? Is her neck shortening? What is she doing with her head and neck when she's stuck on that circle?
She's been much better at keeping it fairly level. It will come back up. It generally comes back. Sometimes it comes back up when she stops. She stops a lot. And I let her stop. And I give her, a minute to think about it. And then I ask her to go. And she's been better about going forward at that point.
Okay.
But her head will come up, and then, I bend her head one way and then the other, and she will bring it back down. And sometimes in the very beginning when we're riding, lots of times it is very low. After the first 5 minutes or so, like I did this video twice. The first time I did it, it was kind of a practice, and her head was fairly low, and she was walking straighter. I could get a little bit of straightness out of the line that we were walking. But then we stopped it and we started over, and that's generally how it works. The first 5 minutes, she seems to be long and low, and she can walk in a fairly straight line. But then after about 5, 8, 10 minutes, maybe, then she starts into this circle. I can't seem to make any headway. I can't seem to help her. I've tried everything
Okay.
I think of, pretty much.
Okay. So is any or all of that on the video link?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's look at that
Jeff
because
started.
with everything you just said, I have 3 different things to discuss with you to get through this feeling of being stuck. And then we'll look at how she's doing it in particular before I start thinking about the 3 major categories I want to discuss with you today.
Okay.
So let me share the screen. And let me make this big. There we go. And I have the sound off, which makes it easier for us to talk. Ooh, that's what my pasture looks like right now. Can you believe it? We had a couple of frosts and my pasture looks just as brown.
Well, and that's fine because she hasn't worn her muzzle.
Ah,
Doesn't have to wear a muzzle when it's that color. So Deb's looks exactly the same. So
yeah. Well, even in Florida, that's pretty much what our pastures look like right now.
yeah. So
It's very cute. The glamour shot, right? Make sure you're getting my good side, she says.
every time she stops, she turns and looks in that direction, just like that. You'll see her do.
Interesting.
Yes. And
So
it's
is
not
this is the beginning where she's willing to go straighter. You're getting her to relax the neck and the back. She's finding a little length. And is this is the beginning of the actual ride before she starts the circles?
this is after I've been on her for about 10-15 minutes at this point.
Okay. So she still looks like she's listening to your seat and direction. She's stopping a lot. She's putting her back down a little when she stops, but I'm not too concerned about that. It's more when she starts walking forward. Try and get this out of the way.
Oh.
That I just like what you're doing is good. She's struggling a little to stay in length, which means that she doesn't feel she can rely on the stability of her back and hindquarter. That's typically why the head will go up and down the way she's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So like just as she really relaxes and lengthens the neck, there she stayed in forward motion. That's ideal. There, when she came to the corner, she resorted back to pushing the back down, shortening and lifting the neck. Then you get her out of it and she begins to lengthen the back and the neck again. Then she pushes back and says, no, not so much. So you're not really having to bend the neck to prevent chronic high-headedness, which is nice to see. But she's not stable when she lengthens her neck. She can't stay in long and low as you're wandering around. Would you say that's sort of problem number 1?
Yes.
Okay. So the consistency.
And here's her circle. This is where she stays. This tiny little circle that we're going in.
Okay.
See, there's that
and stopping a lot.
Yes.
On the circle. What's nice is that your position looks very vertical, very quiet, very stable. So you're addressing, you seem to not be shifting excessive weight. We'll talk about what you feel you're doing with your body because it doesn't necessarily, it's never always the inside or the outside. It depends on how the horse uses the spine, particularly in rotation when they're turning. So we can talk about that a little, but what's good is I don't see in your seat any excessive leaning that's putting you out of balance.
No, and I think that, I mean, I do focus on my thighs a lot to make sure that I am level.
You are, because when you mentioned, like, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and maybe we'll touch on it briefly as we watch the video play, is you said how you were using your seat bones first to the outside with extra weight, and then you shifted that to your outside leg. So it's not correct. Like, if you ride Western, they tell you to sit on the outside and push the turn. If you ride English, they tell you to sit on the inside and bend the horse around your leg. And I go, which one is right? Neither one, because a horse is a living, dynamic, moving animal. They can sometimes go around a turn where we need to sit to the inside, and sometimes go around a turn where we need to sit to the outside. It depends entirely on how they coordinate their back in that moment. So, what you're doing is a very good job of checking yourself, no matter what she does, and you're not being shifted left to right. That's ideal. So, whether internally you feel like you have more weight to like, our goal is to maintain levelness of our seat bones and equal length of our legs, no matter what the horse does underneath us. So, as the forces change in the use of her back, it has nothing, there's no predictable pattern when a horse makes a turn, whether we're going to have to sit to the inside or the outside. Same thing with upward transitions or canter leads. The horse will do it in a unique way. So our goal is to keep our body level and straight, but internally, that might mean that we have to have more weight on one seat bone or the other because the horse's back is contracting more on the left side or the right side. So they might be rolling the thorax into the turn or away from the turn. They can do either one at any given moment.
Right.
So what you were describing, I was a little concerned that you might be inappropriately trying to use weight as an aid that wasn't related to how she was actually moving. I don't see that in the video. I don't see you do what you were describing. So it may be that you need the weight on the outside leg and or seat bone. So when we, like, the way we feel lightest and most stable to the horse is when we have equal weight distribution between our arms and back, our seat and pelvis, and all the way through our legs. So you don't want to feel like you have excessive body weight in the seat or the leg. It should feel kind of equally distributed head to toe.
Right.
Then, if you need to shift a little bit of weight left to right, that could be the seat bone and the leg if she's pushing up against you when she's rolling the thorax during rotation issues. Does that make sense? So that was one of the big ideas I wanted to address. So I'm putting number one by that. But what I'm seeing in the video is you're doing a very good job. No matter what she's doing, you're doing a very good job staying vertical. And no matter, you can see her push on the saddle and roll her barrel, but you're not going with it. That's ideal.
Okay.
Okay. Now let me just back that up a hair, because on that particular turn, whoops, we can see exactly what we're talking about. Where is it? Okay. So right here, you can see where her pelvis is a little unlevel. You can even see just the line of the saddle, how it's slightly higher on the right side or the outside compared to the inside. So if you feel you need to sit on your right seat bone a little more and keep more weight down your right leg, that's absolutely appropriate. Now,
Yes.
that's not a predictable thing. right? So if we, oh, it jumps in 5 seconds. It used to let me do slow-mo, but now I just have to play it. Because when I hit the arrow key, it used to run the video in slow motion, and now it jumps every 5 seconds. It's annoying. So I'm just going to pause it as you come around this turn. Now there, you see the angle of the saddle shift?
Yes.
Okay. So if in your mind, you're thinking, I always sit on the outside seat bone to push the turn, you're going to have too much weight here when her body has reversed the pattern, which she just did in roughly, I don't know, 3 to 5 strides.
Right.
Right? That's how fast it happens. So
Okay.
when we think of just being level, so when you look down at your thighs, when your thigh bones are equal to each other over gravity, that doesn't mean your weight is going to be equal inside your body, left to right. So we do want to feel equal weight head to toe on a vertical plane, but to cope with that rotation issue in the horse's thorax, right where we sit in the saddle, our weight may not be equal left to right. And we may have to shift it back and forth a lot depending on how the horse uses the spine on a turn.
Okay.
It's easier on a straight line for the horse to keep the alignment of the spine straight and to keep the rotation function. The rotation function in our bodies, it's a twist. So in the horse's barrel, it's the feeling of rolling side to side.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what we looked at a second ago was the saddle a tiny bit tipped high on the right or the outside and just a hair low on the inside. So that's the rotation going a little bit too far to the left. So the back contracts on the right, pushing the saddle upward. Now, a few strides later, it's the opposite.
Okay. Right. I see
Right.
that.
So you actually look level, but internally, if you think I always sit on the outside because that's where you feel more force more often, you might miss the moments where she pushes up with the contraction on the inside back muscle. So the only way we feel it in real time is by kind of finding either looking at our thigh bones staying equal all the time or feeling our seat bones level to each other while the horse is moving.
Okay.
And when her head is up like this and she's shortening the neck, the side effect of the back pushing down is hyperrotation. So that means they rock side to side in a very unpredictable pattern.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that was the first thing to address with your weight. And it shouldn't be more in your seat bone than your leg. You want a connection. If you have to shift greater than 50% of your body weight, like in this case, it's not very much. Maybe it's 52% to your left seat bone. But that should be congruent with your left leg.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense? And
Yes,
that
and I was doing that. I would say that in some instances, in my mind, I'm thinking that my leg and my seat bone are separate. So I probably have put not, the amount of weight is definitely different, I would say.
okay.
And
So
not
you can
then,
play
yeah.
with that because when I think of, let me see if I can draw a line. So when I think of, how do I can't, you're in the wrong place for me to draw a line easily. Let me see if I can move this thing. Okay. So when we talk about vertical weight distribution, we have better self-control over our bodies and we feel lighter to the horse if we don't concentrate our weight. You can think of this is our upper body segment, this is our seat segment, and then we have our leg and feet segment. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
So some people put all of their body weight, where's my mouse? There we go. Some people are very tense in the shoulders, pulling their center of gravity upward, making their upper body heavy. Some people put all their body weight in the seat and the low back, making their seat the heaviest out of the three. And some people either clamp with the legs or push into the stirrups or put too much weight in the legs compared to the upper body. So if we said 10 is very heavy and 1 is very light, you can use a numbering system to go, does the weight of my arms match the weight of my seat and back or core? Does that match the weight of my legs right into the stirrups? And it doesn't matter what number, it's just that it's a feeling of equalness. So we could have a 10, a 10, and a 10, or a 2, a 2, and a 2. But
Okay.
if we're too heavy in the seat, we might have a 1, a 6, and a 3.
Right. Okay.
If we're overloading the stirrups and overusing our legs, we might have a 6, a 3, and a 5, right? So when you compare these three segments of your body, sort of the upper body, the middle of the body into the seat bones, and then the legs as a separate part, you can just sort of play with shifting weight up and down until they feel roughly like the same number. And what that does is it balances not only internal weight distribution, which is our self-carriage, but it also alters the muscle tone. So when we overly tighten the muscles, it has a tendency to feel lighter to us. And when we relax the muscles, it has a tendency to feel heavier. So when we equalize the muscle use between our upper body, lower torso, and legs, we're also kind of equalizing the amount of tension and suppleness throughout all of our muscles.
Okay.
And that gives us more ability to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So it not
Okay.
only stabilizes our body and makes us feel lighter to the horse, but we start to receive. So if you're really heavy in your seat, you might be doing all the talking and no listening.
Okay.
If you're really heavy in your legs, you're talking with your legs, but you can't listen and talk at the same time. So when you equalize that weight up to down, you have the ability to receive the feel of the horse's movement in your legs, in your seat, and through the reins all at once. Right? And
Okay.
when you contract or you give an aid, and what we're talking about with shifting your weight in order to keep your own stability is the first aid we give a horse, because we're resisting an imbalance just by keeping our own balance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let me then erase these lines. And when the horse loses, like when the head and neck go up and the back is pushing down, you lose, you get a hyper rotation, which is a hyper rolling of the barrel, left, right, left, right, left, right. It becomes very unstable. And the more unstable it becomes, the more they start to bend the spine, misaligning the front end from the hind end from the neck, right? So internal straightness is not just a straight line of force or the alignment of the spine, but also keeping the rotation stable and upright. You don't have much of that problem. You are resolving that issue 90%. But when we're correcting straightness, what you're talking about with weight shift, which is really truly dynamic, is we're talking more about splitting our body. It's a little bit of a weird angle, but now we're going to split our body in half this way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of, it's a little bit off center. So when we think of our balance, we're kind of having those horizontal lines to ascertain our body weight head to toe. Then when we're there, we're going to feel the upward force, which is going to hit our seat bone, our shoulder, and our leg.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So in this particular picture where we stopped, and you see you're resisting the force. And in your mind, if you're sitting to the outside, then your body is filling in the gap in a nice way. Because what's happening here is the upward force, like we could see in the saddle, slightly tilting higher on the left side.
Uh-huh.
The upward force from the horse against your body is that direction.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
I think
that's
so.
the only reason our weight is ever unequal left to right, is because when the horse creates an upward force on one side because they lose the balance related to straightness, we create from the shoulder all the way through the seat bone, all the way down our leg. We're resisting the upward force by matching the downward force.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we split our body left to right because that's the way rotation works in the horse. It's a left to right force.
Okay.
So anything related to straightness or steering always involves the alignment and the rotation.
Okay.
Okay. So is that clearer on how to use your body weight?
Yes.
Okay. Because when you just like, when a horse has a rotation issue, it can create lateral bending in the rider. You're doing a very good job of keeping the axis of your body very straight. That is the correction to the horse's imbalance. That is the aid.
Okay.
Okay. That's how you correct it. So then when we bring in our legs and arms, we're supporting what we're already saying with our body.
Okay.
Okay. So let me get rid of all these lines. But that's one of the things when you talked about using your seat bones on the outside and shifting from your seat bone to the leg. That's one of the things I wanted to make sure you're very clear on, because this is a very dynamic issue that's happening all the time, especially if we're talking about steering, which is the problem you brought up where you feel most stuck.
Yes.
Okay. So let's hit play again. And just watch in here. Just watch the saddle. And you'll see how quickly she sort of pushes the saddle left or right. And she stopped there. I'm going to back it up a little bit so you can kind of look while she's moving. But just keep and see what a great job you're doing. You're not getting unseated left to right. You're not bending the rib cage, leaning left to right, losing your verticalness. Front to back, up to down is related, but it's the left to right where we most often kind of succumb to the horse's movement. So a back view is easiest to see. So you can see her barrel rolling and her pelvis shifting, high on the inside, high on the outside.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's only in the moment where she's lengthening the neck that you have achieved stability in her back. So the fact that she only lets go of the neck for a second while she's moving, or she chooses to stop, tells you she still doesn't feel stable in that alignment and rotation or the internal straightness. Because once they feel stable there, they spontaneously lengthen the neck to tell us they're there. They let go of all the excessive contraction in the back and the neck, which is what's stabilizing the body when the spine is unstable. So all of these steps where she's lengthening her neck, that's where she's got the rotation and the alignment under control. That's internal straightness for her.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes,
So then we'll kind of skate into issue number 2. The reason I gave you the task of not steering is because that internal stability was difficult for her,
yes,
right?
right,
So when we decide not to steer, we can feel where the horse's middle is going through the saddle, and we can choose to just put the neck in front of the middle wherever the middle goes. That's just a quick way to help a horse stabilize when they're very unstable.
uh-huh,
Okay. So now what steering does, the external path of travel is a point of reference for us to feel the more subtle shifts regarding the internal straightness of the horse.
okay,
Okay. So without a path of travel, when we allow the horse to wander, we're sort of saying, if you fall left or you fall right, that's okay. We're just going to build a little primary stability through the midline wherever you go. Does that make sense?
yes,
So that's just the beginning to kind of get the horse to come out of chronic extension, high headedness, or if they've been doing that for a while, their whole body is kind of unstable.
mm-hmm,
So the purpose of wandering is to initiate stability through their axial skeleton, which is the skull, this whole spine, the rib cage, and the pelvis. Right? So
okay,
if they're when they are chronically high-headed, high alert, defensive, which is where she started, and she had had a long-term pattern of that, which is why she's called Cayenne, right?
right,
So when they have a long-term habit of that over time, that use of the body with the back down, the neck up has a destabilizing effect on their axial skeleton. So they get more tense, more tight, more out of control of their body, which just perpetuates the behavioral issues. So you've reversed that, right? You've completely reversed that by not steering. She's able to lengthen her neck, which is a reflection of the lengthening of the back muscles, but she's having trouble maintaining it or finding consistency with it.
okay,
Okay. So this is the perfect time to use an external path of travel to solidify the basic coordination of internal straightness and get her more and more consistently either in long and level or long and low. I would be happy with either one at this point.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yes,
Okay. So what the path of travel does is, let me see if I can find a moment. Okay, so I'm going to pause it there. And you can think of your path of travel like a sidewalk that extends out in front of you that's about a horse width. Okay,
okay,
so even on a turn, oops, I'll make it less of a steep angle. There's always a left and right side, right? So
yes,
even if we were to make a circle, you sort of make it like this with a series of straight lines and little pivots. So you always have a lane that's about horse width that you're traveling in.
okay,
Okay. So that lane, and you could visually mark it out. That does help. You could use chalk or cones or rocks or anything that gives you a little visual point of reference. Because when we have a strong visual line, what we're trying to feel is this line through the middle of the horse is traveling in the middle of these two lines.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And she
And
really has time with that.
yes, that is where the reason she's not consistently out of high head back down extension is because she needs the steering so that you become more precise. She needs more precision in that internal alignment, which is what the path of travel gives us.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm trying to change the color. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Oh well. Let me erase this line.
Trying to do something else.
What's that?
You'll figure it out trying to do something else.
I will.
That's since I learned how to
Okay,
do
there,
that.
I have a different color. So I outline the path of travel, the idea of it. And to be precise with balance, you can make your path of travel sidewalk size. That's just wide enough to fit a horse.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you might be starting on a 2-lane highway because it'll be difficult, right? But you want to narrow that path down to a sidewalk. And then wherever you go, you basically lay that sidewalk down in front of you. Either you can do it visually to learn it, but pretty soon you just do it mentally.
Okay.
And a sidewalk can go round around a tree, straight, S patterns, curvy. Sidewalks can be all kinds of shapes, but there's a distinct border on the left and right of a sidewalk. That's what a path of travel is.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Does, yes.
So your path of travel has 2 edges. And what that helps with is internally, I did it in yellow, we have the midline of the horse, right? That should stay equal between both sides of the path.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you feel the midline shifting here, you start to feel where you need the resistance.
Okay.
Right? So if her midline is exactly like this short yellow line here, then you need to create resistance on the outside shoulder.
Okay.
Right? To push
Okay.
it back into a straight line and put it back over here. So you create resistance on your left side in this case to guide the movement forward, back towards the center, which would be forward and towards the right. Then she
Okay.
overcorrects and she's
Yes.
suddenly here, right?
Right.
So you create resistance on this side, sort of aiming here again. So when you do it on a turn, that happens very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when she's stuck on a turn, she's either going to be stuck by being on the turn here, or she's going to be stuck by being on the turn over here.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if she's the one making the circle smaller and smaller, pushing on your inside, then you create resistance here on the inside. That could be
Okay.
your body weight, but not necessarily your body weight. It could just be muscle tone.
Okay.
And this is where it gets complicated because she could be pushing to the inside of my lines, my path of travel, with her back high on the inside or high on the outside.
Okay. I would say it's generally high on the outside.
Okay.
Uh,
Just
it's-
knowing that that can change, it's unpredictable.
yeah, and it does change.
Yeah. So there's no rule that this midline of the horse is her alignment, that yellow line, right? So the alignment of the horse could shift. If we take this first yellow line, the whole horse's body can shift this way and that way while you travel, right? Oh, that's a good way to do it. Let me get these lines out of the way. That might be a good way to sort of show where her whole body is going, which is really directed from the torso, right where you sit, right? So you have an internal straight line But that straight line, what you might not realize when you're not steering is we're sort of allowing that internal straight line to just drift all over the place. Does that
Right.
make sense? When we start using an external path of travel, we become more precise with the functions of alignment and rotation internally because we have external perspective. We
Yes.
compare the internal to the external. That's what a path of travel really does,
Yes.
right? Because you could easily also have a path of travel without a straight line inside,
Yes.
right? So it's like when you're internal, you could have, instead of this straight yellow line internally, you could have an inside that feels like this.
It does. Yes.
So when she's high-headed, she's going to feel like this squiggly line from nose to tail.
Mhm.
So when I feel that, that's the purpose of not steering, is to stabilize all of this misdirection of force, which is imbalance or crookedness or hyperrotation. Without steering internally, I can change this line of force into this line of force. That's how you stabilize the axial skeleton of the horse, which is a preparation for lifting the back.
Okay.
Okay, so the purpose of not steering is to get from here to here, to get from a disorganized midline to an organized midline. And the force, even though geometrically the body isn't geometrically straight, what we feel when we have the proper alignment of all the vertebra from skull to tail, and we've stabilized rotation, is we feel a line of force down the midline of the horse that feels as effing straight as this line.
Right.
There is no wiggle. There is none of, this business through the middle.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense? So that is the only purpose behind letting the horse wander and keeping the neck in front of the tail, is to get from this internal
Yes.
coordination to this internal coordination.
Okay.
Okay, so that you've done well. The reason she's not staying out of extension and the reason you feel you're losing steering has more to do with the second phase, which is using an external path of travel as a point of reference to now move this straight internal line of force very specifically, right? So as we make a turn, the inside, the forehand leads the direction of the turn. I have to shorten this up to make this turn. But
Right.
the outside swings out and we move forward, right? Then the inside comes in, the outside goes out, and we move forward. And that's where you get the adduction, abduction of the legs, because the midline should stay straight as we move forward, right? So then the inside front goes away from the midline, abducting. The outside front crosses the midline, adducting. The inside hind adducts towards the midline, and the outside hind abducts. So that's how a horse can be absolutely straight through the spine on a turn.
Right.
You're basically moving the front end and the hind end at the same time with every little degree of a turn, right? So that's why turns are hard,
Okay.
okay? Because you have to keep navigating where's the front end, where's the hind end, because they may turn the front end too much and keep going. That's what
Yes.
she's doing, right? Or they may turn the hind end too much and keep going, right? Or they may, if they're not good at adducting and abducting the legs and they're tight there, which is another side effect of long-term extension, then they can't step with the legs laterally. And so they shift the whole body there. They fall into the turn, right? Or they drift out of the turn. So within your path of travel, and this is why it really helps. It helps us learn to feel the details of the balance when we have a strong visual sidewalk sized path of travel to play with.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So this gets us into the second basic topic I wanted to cover with you, which is sort of you're not getting the consistency you want because whenever she sort of loses her balance and we let them wander, we're just randomly changing direction because they lost the balance and going forward like this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're keeping the internal straightness, but we're sort of allowing them to shift direction in order to do that.
Right.
As soon as we say, okay, now we have a specific path of travel, this specific path of travel, oh, it disappeared. I don't know how I did that. Okay, let me start another one.
What, your path of travel?
My little short
Oh.
horse that I was moving around, the yellow line. Yellow line disappeared. I don't know where it went. Okay, so there's a new yellow line. You see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this yellow line is the yellow line I drew in the horse.
Okay.
The path of travel is a sidewalk, outside, external, actual path.
Okay.
Okay. And you can imagine it as a single track trail through the mountains where you're going to fall 500 feet on either side. Or, right, you can think of it as a bridge or a balance beam, but it's specific. So when you mark it out visually, it becomes specific. That's what actually helps us feel that as soon as we track forward, if she does that, then suddenly moving the opposite way. Oh, well. If she does that, we feel where to resist to get back to here.
Okay.
If she does that, we feel where to resist to get back to here. We feel the forces.
Okay.
Make
Right.
sense?
Yes.
So you'll feel there's more force at the front end, more force at the hind end, but you're right in the middle. You direct the forces from here. Then they
Okay.
have this long neck. Theoretically, the neck should be in line with the tail. But sometimes when we do that and they push this way with their whole body, we can't really resist. They can't follow us because the force of the imbalance is greater than our capacity to resist.
Yes.
Okay, that's why we have reins. Okay. So theoretically, we steer from the saddle. So right where I have the select tool is where we sit, right?
Right.
And it won't let me twist it. But basically, here, when we go to make the turn, oops, the front end is there, the hind end goes there, but we're still here in the middle, directing the whole horse. So as we rotate our body, as if we were walking the path of travel, we do that
Okay.
the midline of the horse. So it's just like if I take this pen in my hand,
Right.
because it's stable and straight, if I twist my fingers just a tiny bit, the opposite ends of the pen go opposite directions.
Okay.
Ultimately, how we steer from the saddle.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So we
Yeah.
just rotate our spine or our seat bones, or we face our body. As you come up to this turn in the path, you would square your body to the path.
Okay.
Okay. She may or may not be able to stay with you when you do that. If she can't stay with you, Then you use muscular energy in your legs, your seat, your reins to resist where she's going that is not with you,
Okay.
right? But where we tend to think on a path of travel, we're all taught that our path of travel is, whoops, you can't see the yellow line. Let me get a different color. This is important, especially if we've ever ridden jumps or anything like that. I'll use blue. We're taught to look where we're going.
Yes. Yes.
That puts our human brain way ahead of the horse.
Yes.
So the way to actually get steering ultimately from the saddle and improve the mechanical functions of the back is our sense of steering has to be here.
Okay.
This blue line marks out every step on the path of travel. So we
Okay.
take this spot and we travel here, and then here, and then here, and then here. You see how we change the direction. Does that make sense? Oh, I think you froze. Oop. Well, while we're frozen, I will erase some of these lines. I don't know if I'm frozen. There we go. There you are.
Oh, wow.
That was a long freeze. Was I frozen too?
Yes, there was nothing happening.
Okay. So I'm not sure how that recorded, but I will start over where I left off.
Okay.
Which is, so when we start to look too far ahead of us, there's nothing wrong with looking where you're going, but we tend to just make it all about our heads, visually looking.
Yes.
When you think of steering, like I showed with the pen, if you have a straight horse, which is the yellow line, every time you reorient the direction of your seat, you're guiding this whole yellow line to be precisely between the two red lines.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So if I put, what color is that? Yellow, blue. So if I put us sort of here in the middle of the horse, where the star is,
Uh-huh.
it's multiple dimensions. You see, this is why steering is a big issue for all riders. We have multiple dimensions. So we talked about the rotation function, which
Right.
is the high side, low side, left to right. The straight yellow line is the alignment of the spine, but we could also say also a level. So straight and level across
Right.
the horse. Then we take the straight and level line and we move. Whoops. I'm not sure how to join those two. But basically, the horse moves, but we stay in the middle.
Right. Okay.
There's my star. This is a little tedious to do. The horse
I bet.
moves. But you get the idea now, right? Okay. And then we stay. Whoops, I can't grab my star. So if we're kind of here, I don't know why it won't grab my star. Won't select it. Oh, well. You get the idea.
I do, yes.
Okay. So that's how steering improves balance. but we can steer at the expense of balance. So steering itself using an external path of travel doesn't guarantee balance unless we're using the external path of travel with the internal perspective.
Okay, I get that. I get
Okay.
that. Okay.
Because if you put the path of travel as a means to balance, what ends up happening a lot is, whoops, instead of this straight yellow line kind of navigating a turn or a path, as soon as we get to a turn, the internal line, trying to get my right colors, the internal line can start to become too bent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that internal line bending can put the hindquarters over here, the front end here, and they lose the alignment of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, and we were told that the internal feeling of the horse should match the bend of the turn.
Right.
Mechanically, that's too much bend. So what happens is then they rotate. They lift the
Right.
barrel on the inside or the outside if that's the theory that we're operating on.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to get level on a turn and widen the muscles, or sorry, widen the stance between the hind legs and widen the stance between the front legs, making a horse more square, is if the midline is always this, especially on a turn or a circle.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So mechanically, that is the sound way for the horse to track a circle. What she's probably doing where you're stuck and losing steering could very well be that she's one of these shapes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I take this bent shape, she could still be pushing inward like this, or I could reverse it. She could be like that, pushing the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
And I
sense?
and I feel like what I'm doing is we are traveling, our path of travel can be straight, but her internal path is as crooked as a snake, and I can feel it. I can
Okay.
feel it crooked, but I don't know how to make it straight.
So if you've maxed out what you can do without steering, using an external path of travel is what makes you more precise. And that may
Okay.
be what she needs.
Okay. Well, that I
Okay.
can definitely, yeah, I can definitely do that.
And I would mark out a lot. Well, you have a small riding area, anyways, that's sort of oval shaped.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the benefits of straight on a turn is the natural lateral movement of the legs that's required when the spine is maintained straight can support the stability of the back and hindquarter.
Say that exactly the same way you said it one more time.
When they turn with a straight midline like this, the only way they can make the turn is a slight lateral movement through all four legs.
Okay. All
So
right.
they
I understand. Okay.
they adduct and abduct the legs if we maintain a straight and level spine.
Okay.
So that adduction and abduction can be useful to building the stability of the hindquarter and the back.
Okay.
So one of the reasons you can play with large circles, you can use the outside track of your oval, which is about as straight as you're going to get. That's the straightest line possible in your riding area, would be the outside edge.
Mm-hmm.
If she's still not staying in a long neck, then you can start building almost like, if you go to like a high school track, they have lanes. I think you froze again. Are you there?
Oh, yeah. Am I there? I can
Yeah,
hear you.
now you're there. Okay.
Am I
So
gone?
if you think of your arena like a running track that's at high schools with different lanes, start on the outside lane, but if she's not consistently staying in a lengthened use of her back and neck muscles, start moving inward on your lanes.
Okay.
Because there will be a specific and certain degree of turning her straight spine where she gets her hind legs under her and can let go of that excess tension in her back and neck.
Okay.
Okay. So the turn kind of helps with the engagement of the hind legs. Very gently.
Okay.
You don't have to make it happen. You don't see it happen. You just keep the midline straight and it happens.
Okay.
But that's where you can play with various degrees of straight or turns to find where it's easiest for her to let go of her neck and stay let go. Just keep her
Okay.
neck long.
Okay.
Okay. And so each track you're on, you can mark out visually. You'll find the one that works for her right away. It won't be a question. The fact that she's choosing to go on tiny little, what did you say, 15-meter circles and you can't
Yeah.
get her off,
Yeah.
if her neck is long on those 15-meter circles, she could be using that size circle to find stability that she seeks. She could be giving you clues to what she needs, right?
Okay.
If she's high-headed on a 15-meter circle, then she's using the tightness of the circle to tell you, I want to stop,
Okay.
right? She could be doing either one. So you have to sort of read her body language and the energy. But there's no reason, if she's on a 15-meter circle, that you couldn't gradually widen it. So you can think of that 15-meter circle like even like a bullseye, like you're going to move out on concentric circles, making
Okay.
the circle bigger and bigger and bigger until you can go straight,
Okay.
right? But if she lets go of her neck and can maintain a more accurate path of travel, even if it's a 15-meter circle, she might be showing you the degree of the turn that she needs in order to keep her hind legs underneath her.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
straight lines are not better. Small circles are not better or worse. Straight lines are not better or worse for balance. The horse will show you.
Okay.
But what you're looking for, and what I mean by the horse showing you, let me get rid of all these lines. Are there any questions before I erase all these different lines?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. So internally, we want the straight yellow line. Externally, that internal straight line stays between two external lines.
Okay.
And that's your dressage test in a nutshell. It's all geometry.
Right.
Even if you're jumping, the approach to the jump is everything. It's all geometry. All right. As soon as we lose this internal, and I mean, it feels broomstick straight, level, and stable when they've got it.
Right. Yeah.
If you still feel a little wiggle on the inside, that's why her head is popping up and down.
Okay.
Okay. And you're doing an excellent job with your body. And we've already talked about that. So the only other thing you can add, which will help her, would be a very specific path of travel.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the only other thing. So any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And this is the way to master a path of travel. Your eyes look
Okay.
vertically directly under your seat bones with your feet under your seat, and you imagine that you're walking the path. So
Okay.
your horse is your legs, But whatever skill we use to walk a path, which we can all do, is the very same coordination of our body, but we're letting our horses be the legs that carry us there. But when
Okay.
you imagine you're walking the path right here underneath you, you feel how to give 10,000 aids at the same time because you feel the second the horse is pulling you or pushing you off of your intended path.
Okay.
So this is the power focus right here. Your path of travel happens one step at a time here, directly
Okay.
underneath you, that blue line.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So let's look at now, get all these lines off of here. And let's just let the video play. And I know you're really not steering her because it served you better in the beginning to get her calm and cooperative, to not try to steer her at the same time you were getting her straight and stable. You're past that point.
Okay.
And that might be why both of you are struggling, is because you're ready to move, like you maximized the gains out of not steering, and you are kind of stuck there, but not knowing that the way to advance is to add an external path of travel and start steering very specifically.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's how the steering improves the balance.
Okay.
We can also steer in a way that we sacrifice the balance. So that's why with her, we started without steering, because any steering sacrificed her balance completely. Right. She just resisted and threw her back down and her head up and done.
Right.
Okay, so now when we hit play, with everything we talked about, what do you see? You're doing a fantastic job staying vertical and pretty stable left to right. So we check that box and go, we've maximized that skill or that strategy. Now we want to keep that and add, right? So then we let the horse choose the path of travel. So if she becomes unstable in the hindquarters, the back, the front end, we just put the neck in front of it and regain stability instantly. You've maximized that strategy because she's letting go of her neck, but she doesn't hold the change in the posture that we want. Right? Would you say that's a fair assessment of where you're at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So now to gain the consistency of the change we want, now you can see where she shifts her hindquarter or her front end, and she tenses the neck, and you have to get her neck back in front and balance yourself. So this is where she starts to just keep turning, correct? Making this circle. Right. So you're going to have to use the reins as part of getting the steering in the beginning. Don't worry if you have to use the reins. We start with the seat and we end with the seat, but we might have to use the reins during all the in-between parts. Okay, so you do your best to keep your seat on the path of travel. And by seat, I'm also including your legs underneath you.
Okay.
But if she's blowing through your seat and legs, you need the reins to support, even if you have to bend her neck a little to keep her in the path of travel. It's part of improving the balance. So the reins are the back plan when you can't be effective with your seat and legs. So you use them. What I tend to do is try with my seat and legs, count to 3. If that didn't work, you bet I'm using the reins.
Okay.
Okay. Because she keeps changing the path of travel with huge variances. So what that tells you is she falls left, she falls right with her shoulders and hindquarter, and you've done a great job getting her straight and stable. Whoops, let me replay that. Getting her straight and stable internally, but she needs the path of travel to fully stabilize the entire body, not just the midline.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And that should give you more consistency. And see
Okay.
where she looks left, she's only pushing up a little bit on your left seat bone. She should
Mhm.
be throwing you to the right.
Oh,
So when the neck bends left, they typically roll the barrel high on the left, low on the right, and the vice versa when they overbend the neck the other way. So that's why the straight neck helps stabilize the barrel. But if you need the reins, even to the point of bending her neck, you have great control over your body. You have a good sense of feeling that internal straight line in her. You're getting the result. And so now, when you take everything you're already doing and add a very specific path of travel, you should find it just helps it helps her stabilize her balance further so that she can quit pushing her back down and putting her neck up.
okay.
And she may go into a really deep nose on the ground, long and low, because she's been tight in her back and neck for a while. And
Mhm.
in this video, the amount of strides where she's resorting to that tells you she doesn't feel entirely stable in the coordination of her skeleton. So the path of travel is to help really stabilize the whole skeleton in motion so that she can further release the excess use of her muscles.
Okay. Okay.
I think that covers. I took notes, so
Yeah.
yeah, so when you use the reins for steering, you said she gets agitated. That was the only thing we didn't address. What I would do is, if you use the reins for steering, make sure it's specifically one at a time and release as soon as she is where you want her.
Okay.
So you will have to use the reins, but that doesn't mean you have to use the reins the whole time. You sort of use them when she doesn't follow your seat and your legs, and then you release them when she is underneath you on the path of travel.
And I think I kind of, I'm pretty sure my habit is to not do that. And I forget to let go.
Once you
know,
start using them.
Yes, once I get her in, once I get her where I think I want her, then I'm trying to hold her there.
Yeah, that's why you own a chestnut mare. She'll teach the crap out of you. She'll remind you within about 3 seconds to quit doing that.
She does.
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah. So if you take her feedback rather than thinking resistance, it's just feedback that you held on to the reins too long.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Because your hands and your rein use is beautiful without steering. So you want to use as little as possible to get steering. It's not an all or nothing thing. There's lots of variety in the feel we can offer through the reins.
Right.
So you try with your seat to stay in that corridor or on that sidewalk, but she's going to push through you. It's not personal, it's just her balance. It's a lack of control she has over her body, which is why she resorts to high-headedness over and over. That shows that she doesn't feel stable without excessively using her neck and back muscles. And that's also why she's stopping a lot. So you don't have to let her stop as long. You could be a little more pushing her forward when you feel her about to stop. You can bring your legs on. If it starts to piss her off too much, then you'll get the right timing with your legs, right? To keep her out of defensiveness, but also not just perpetually stop all the time. You'll also get feedback from her about using the reins, releasing the reins. She'll remind you. I don't have to. She'll be.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
I just have to listen.
Yeah, if you use too much leg or too much rein, she's gonna, snarl at you.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. So in your mind, what helped me a lot was to put it in an order, like number 1, 2, 3, 4, break my aids into as many steps as I could. Right.
Okay.
So I go, okay, step 1, my seat. Or sorry, step 1, my visual focus. Step 2, I walk there. I pretend to control my own body as if I'm walking.
Okay.
Step 3, I resist with my body weight and muscle tone through my back, my seat, my legs. Step 4, I resort to one rein or the other to get the horse back on track. Like,
Okay.
that's just an example. You can break it into 10 steps if you want. But when you break it into steps, what happens is it trains you to do as little as possible, follow through with as much as necessary, and then go back to as little as possible.
Okay.
Right? Because if we go to as much as necessary and we get stuck there, we also never develop self-carriage in the horse.
Right.
So we give the guidance, we give the correction, but we always have to go back to neutral to see, can the horse follow the more subtle use of my body? Can I guide them while they hold their own self-carriage in balance? That's the
Right.
ultimate goal, right? That's why we have to go in and out of support, neutral, support, neutral, support, neutral.
Right.
You have really good habits in this video. You're ready to do that without going back to what you used to do.
Thank you. Good. I'm glad.
And that's really the point of the work you've been doing up to now, is if you're reacting to the horse, you can't have self-control.
Right.
If she pisses you off and you piss her off, you're not going to get anything done.
Mm-mm. No,
Right?
and that does happen. And when that does happen, I get off.
Yeah. And I think you opening this lesson with "I feel stuck" is incredibly accurate, because you have overcome a lot of habits in yourself. You've broken old habits, and you've broken habits in her. You've completely changed the relationship between you and this chestnut mare that used to make you bonkers.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We are having a much better time now.
Yes, it looks enjoyable for both of you.
Mhm.
So the time you've taken to do that, you can't overdo it. Everything is built on this new conversation the two of you are having, this new ability to enjoy each other and have a dialogue rather than a fight,
Mhm.
right? Everything is built on that. So you are there. You are
Good.
there. And so now the next thing I would add in is accurate steering to take the balance higher, to get more
Okay.
consistency and stability. And I think for her, she's showing you by choosing a circle, hey, dummy, this is where we need to work for me to let go of my back and neck.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
So you play with her choices, because they're always telling us in their choices that they're either searching for safety and comfort, and this is the direction we need to go,
Mhm.
or they're resisting change and newness and they're protecting themselves. And
Mhm.
kind of read that easily through the energy. So we don't look at the actions, we look at the energy behind the actions to know, are they protecting themselves or are they exploring?
I see. Okay.
Right? So if you think she's on this circle to protect herself, then I would work to expand the circle outward in spirals.
Okay.
Right? If you think she's on this tight circle exploring herself, you could continue. Maybe make that circle more accurate and then explore, could we make a straight line out of the circle and then do a circle in a different place,
Okay.
or a bigger circle or a smaller circle? But if her energy is low, her ears are on you, she's calm and willing and basically responsive to your aids, she's probably exploring.
Okay.
When they get the ears pinned or distracted, or they're tense or anxious, or they're putting a little a little grr into that loss of steering,
Mhm.
that's them protecting themselves, not wanting
Okay.
to change.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Let me stop this.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, so those were kind of the three major issues, I think. And you said the first 5 minutes were okay, and it starts after. So she starts off good and gets worse.
Mhm.
One of the signs that I read of a horse telling me that they're ready for a new challenge, because when I'm at the appropriate level of challenge for their balance and development, they start off with the most amount of work on my part, the biggest challenges, and they steadily get better, easier to ride the longer I get into the ride.
Mm.
What you're describing is a horse that has maximized the lesson and needs a new challenge because she starts off good, but
Yeah.
then in the next 10 or 15 minutes starts to get worse.
Mhm.
So if she's not getting defensive against you, then that she's just sort of telling you, I need more help.
Right, okay.
And that's
Okay.
something just to keep in the back of your mind because you're through the part of development that sort of takes the most time and is the most tedious. From here forward,
Okay.
every time you improve balance, it starts to grow faster. So, what used to be progress that we felt came inch by inch
Mhm.
starts to leapfrog, and we jump ahead in meters and miles by
Like you feel like what you did on the last ride stuck as opposed to
redoing
it's
it.
in redoing it every single day. It just seems like the, yeah, okay.
Yes. So, just keep in the back of your mind that when she starts off great, everything you've been working on, when a horse starts off from the mounting block, the first 10 minutes offering me what we've been working on in the past, that's a
Mhm.
sure sign to me that we're ready for new challenges. We're ready to up the ante.
Okay,
That's sort of how I read when to advance to new challenges in any horse.
okay, cool,
So
good.
that's that
Right.
stuck feeling. And you can take anything you know. You could take steering, or you could work on walk, trot, halt, canter transitions. You could take what you know out on a trail ride or a different environment. But when you get that stuck feeling, or she starts off good and gets worse, that's when you can be creative, come up with a
Okay,
new challenge.
okay. All right, well, that's good. Now, if
Excellent.
you send us some sunshine and maybe we can ride more.
I know. We're
Good.
fighting, we're fighting for sunshine in the sunshine state. We're
And
not
that's,
getting,
well,
yeah.
it's snowing here and it's been snowing since sometime in the middle of the night. So we've got snow on the ground again.
Oh, geez. No, we
Yeah.
had rain. We've had a couple of freezes, so it basically looks like the Midwest out there, but we're finally starting to get some rain. But every
Mm.
time we get rain, we get another cold front. So it's been, we don't really have winter. We have hot, 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 cold front, hot, 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 cold front.
Right. Well, I do have one more question, which is I tried to pay you and I think I was, well, I know I was unsuccessful. So I went on your website and I went to the store and I scrolled all the way to the bottom and I clicked on whatever it says at the bottom of your store.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me stop the recording and we can discuss
Okay.
that. Okay, because I think we're done with the lesson. So let me just stop the recording.